Television, located in beautiful downtown Missoula, Montana. Now, here's your host, Neil Chase.
And one of the biggest spiritual, I hate to say it, but I'm going to say it, the Vatican, and we know how they are.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying the Vatican is, God by any means. I know all about Catholic religion, believe me. But the Vatican said, and they had in their council paper, saying that one group, 12-step group, such as AA, is the biggest spiritual foundation that they've found in the last century. And so maybe we might have to go with, wow.
With what? With wow or how?
Wow.
I don't really understand their connection. I mean, yeah, the 12-step program by AA has spiritual bases.
It's only a spiritual concept, and that's all there is to it.
But why would you? I mean, the Vatican, number one, their opinions are tainted. What they would express is tainted.
But how is your opinion tainted? Is it tainted, or is it wow? Have you ever looked at the 12-step program?
It's wow. My opinion is wow.
It is wow.
In the Bahai faith, we have 12
Let's go
principles.
beyond that.
In the Bahai faith, we have 12 principles.
Exactly.
Right?
And it all comes
the number
down
12
to
shows itself.
12 principles, right?
Yeah.
So,
one of the things that we see is that when we see a life like Mother Teresa's,
right,
that how could we say that anybody could live a more perfect life than this? And that we notice that instead of having an ego,
I agree.
a mile wide,
I agree.
that her aura extends out in the immediate area to actually be able to help and take care of.
I agree. How do we know that somebody up there on the Buffalo Range, north of us, is not doing the same darn thing that Mother Teresa is doing?
Exactly.
How do we know that?
That's the whole point.
Don't know that.
And that usually when we go through and meet people, that because of like attracting like, we might meet a few people that is on a different realm of it. See?
Exactly.
But then we wind up avoiding the main crowd of that, or they're avoiding us.
Right.
So there is the majority of people are good. And that in order to know if something's true or false, or if it's happening or not happening, we have to have a standard or a criteria.
Well, our criteria.
Now,
what is it?
That's what I'm saying, is that it can't be any old criteria.
Right.
But it's got to be a universal standard. For instance, if we wanted to know how fast our car is going, we'd look at the speedometer. If we want to know what the temperature is, we'd look at the thermometer.
Right.
If we wanted to know what time it is, we wouldn't look at a ruler. We'd look at the clock. So everything just about in our world has a criteria through which we measure it.
It does. And then sometimes it has a criteria that we can exceed or must exceed in certain situations, as in emergency situations and all like that.
Exactly. Now, a lot of people, like Mother Teresa, for example, and others, are true to living the life of the spiritual. And,
yes.
and nobody that is a thinking person that's pure in heart and
right.
judges justly, I think, can't deny that it's a fact, that this is true.
Right.
So Jesus undoubtedly was doing the right thing in his life at all times. Yet, the majority of people was unable to recognize it. That at one point, he fed the poor, and he healed the sick, and he gave them party favors at a wedding. He turned water into wine. But at another time, he went up into the temple, and he overturned tables, and cracked a whip, and called people hypocrites and vipers, and he said they made his father's house a den of thieves.
He's just a man.
So this is righteous indignation.
Right.
Was that him that was angry at them, or was that God that was angry at them? Was God expressing love through him at one moment, and then wrath at another?
God doesn't do that.
So God certainly can't hate at all. This is an impossibility for the Creator to hate.
Exactly.
So we know that God doesn't hate.
He does not hate.
So if you saw your friend about to drink a cup of poison and you loved them, what would you do?
I'd stop.
You'd stop what?
I'd stop him
How?
by drink or knocking the drink out of his hand.
That's right. You would use violence. You would use
Negative.
you would use a physical act of
A
knocking the
physical
cup
act, but
out of
not
his hand.
violence towards him.
Not towards him,
What's the definition of violence?
but toward the cup.
Right.
You would use
Violence is towards an act towards another, a violent act towards another. But
Okay.
this would be towards the drink.
that's
Correct?
correct, toward the drink.
Right.
So Jesus cracked a whip and overturned money changer's table. And if your child, if you saw a little baby or a dog crawling into the middle of traffic, right?
Mhm.
Well, and you were 40 feet away, and there was no way you could get to that dog before the car hit it, what would you do?
What do you think I'd do?
I don't know. What would you do?
I would not dare to stand by and let the mishap happen.
Well, what could you physically do to prevent it if it
No,
was impossible for you to get there physically by running?
Just like I did a long time ago.
What?
I would go out there and remove the situation.
Okay, but suppose the car was getting so close to the dog that you...
I would get hit and then I would die also.
No. If it was physically impossible for you to
Exactly.
get...
I'd still do it anyhow.
No, if it was physically... You're missing what I'm saying. If it was physically impossible for you to get there before the dog, to remove him physically, how would you warn the dog?
I'd yell.
Okay, so this is an expression of love. Because we love the dog,
Of course.
we said, hey! And so this is what happened in the temple. But when we see people that are spiritual, such as Jesus Christ, behaving differently, such as in the temple, this is not because he was human.
Right.
This is because God loves the people. And like the dog in traffic, or the friend about to drink a cup of poison, he slapped that poison out of their mouth and yelled, hey! So the act would stop because he loves them. However, the people misinterpreted that as him disrupting business. Therefore, there has to be an objective criteria to recognize if somebody's from God or not.
I understand.
Okay,
I do.
and what Jesus gave was the fulfillment of prophecy. He gave us a criteria, a new one. Moses gave 10 plagues. By the time those were over with, if you survived, you knew Moses was right. But that wasn't nice. So Jesus gave a new criteria because he brought love. Moses brought the law. So he had 10 different proofs. And Jesus showed that thousands of years before he was born, he was prophesied by what his name would be, his prophesied address,
Yep.
his prophesied date is in the Bible too. Accurate to the very second. From the order to go forth and restore and rebuild Jerusalem, there were 490 years to the crucifixion of Christ on Calvary Cross on March 21st, 34 AD. Prophesied in the 9th chapter of Daniel. We can show you this sometime. And his mission was prophesied.
Cool.
We have a 12-class free
I have a question
fireside
for you all.
program. And that's where you can hear these things, such as that proof I just gave. And that's the criteria. What's your question?
My question is, hey, I was part of the Air Force, when Jimmy Jones was down in Guyana, and I did the cleanup crew on that. And I tell you, I seen some bad stuff, and I don't even want to talk about it. What would you say that's all about?
Okay, first, I've got two things to say.
Yeah.
The first one is, where does it say Jim Jones will come? Where is it?
Nowhere.
Where is his date prophesied, his address and
Okay,
mission?
okay.
So as Jesus gave this criteria, Jim Jones don't satisfy it, neither does the Pope in Rome, or Martin Luther, or Jimmy
But it
Swaggart.
did affect human beings.
Okay, so that's what I think about whether he's sent from God or not. I don't think he's
I'm
sent
not
from
asking
God.
about an opinion about that.
Okay, so that was my first
I'm
comment.
talking about
My second,
people like that.
my second thing to you is that we had a speaker on the show a few weeks ago named Dean Henderson, and he had evidence to show that Jim Jones was somehow tied in with the Central Intelligence Agency. In
I've been with them too.
in some strange scheme. And I don't remember all the details that Dean had, but he had a book that had a docket that explained the details. As far as the people that were victims of that, it's unfortunate that people should be made slaves by being duped by somebody.
I know.
If they would have the criteria
Hello.
of prophecy.
I've worked with the Central Intelligence Agency also, and there's good people and there's bad people. It's not all what you think. And I'll tell you.
Exactly. That God made CIA agents too. And the hearts of men are the home of God. But in order to find out God's covenant, that Jesus said he'd return, he made a covenant, he gave us a criteria so we can recognize the return of Jesus. And we have faith, a Bahai faith, but it's based on proof. Now, do you know what the meaning of the word Christ is? Have you ever come across a definition for that?
Yes.
Or what was the one that you are familiar with?
Thank you very much. You had to put me on the spot, didn't you?
Well, if you don't remember right this moment, that's okay, but if you want to say so, you can.
Maybe you can comment for me.
Okay, there's a lot of people aren't taught what this means, or they don't come across it.
And
So,
I'll be honest with you, when you say your comment, I'll tell you if it was yay or nay.
okay, so that some thinks it's the last name, like Joseph and Mary Christ of Bethlehem
Oh,
Land.
no.
Okay, but I've had people tell me that.
No.
And argue me into the ground that they were right.
No, it's symbolic.
So the word Christ itself comes from a Greek word, Christos,
Yes.
which means to anoint, like to christen a ship.
Always comes from, yes.
Or the Catholics get christened at a certain point.
Yes.
So the Hebrew word for anointed one is Messiah.
Exactly.
So some knowledgeable ones know that Christ and Messiah is the same word that means anointed one.
You're right.
But
You're correct.
but
I'm 37 years old. I've lost a lot of that stuff, but you're exactly right.
But a lot of
On
people...
both the Catholic and the Jewish side.
That's right. But a lot of people that might even know that don't know the full title was Messiah ben David. It means an anointed descendant of King David.
Yes, and then I heard a lot on the TV about the seed of David.
Exactly, and this is what it says in the first verse of Matthew. It says, this is the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David.
It says genealogy.
Yeah, and then or it says this is the book of the generations from Jesus Christ, the son of David, in the King James.
Does it really say genealogy?
Yeah, in the Revised Standard Bible, that's the first verse. Can I have that Bible that's right there, or both of them? Yeah, this is the other one's the Revised Standard Bible.
Do we all know where the recent version of the Bible came from?
Well, there's different they didn't have Xerox machines.
You know when
So there's different handwritten
Attila
copies
the
that come
Hun
down.
came in and invaded Rome,
Yeah?
that he destroyed everything.
And so,
And then one true version of the Bible, did you ever hear that? Escaped into Ireland.
yeah, definitely there was copies that was sent up there also.
Roger that.
Okay, so this is a Revised Standard. It's based on the King James too. It says the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. So
Correct.
Baha'u'llah is also a male sperm descendant of King David.
Male sperm descendant.
Yeah, that in Romans chapter 1, verse 3 and 4.
Buy it. I buy it.
It says Jesus is made of the seed or sperm of David too. So this is the meaning of the word Christ. So
Roger.
Antichrist would mean against Christ. So those people that teach that Jesus, or that are against Jesus' genealogy back to David, or the mainstream Baha'is, that because there's Christian groups that are against Jesus' genealogy back to David.
There's a lot of Christian groups against.
That's right. That makes them against him being the Christ. By being against this, if God is his physical father.
I'm very worried about that last part.
That's right. And so the thing is that Baha'u'llah is also a descendant of King David, but Jesus is descended from Nathan, Solomon's brother, and Nathan was a prophet, and Jesus prophesied the coming of the kingdom of God on earth.
So does that mean we're, as in human beings and leagues, in competition?
What it means is that that each person has a spiritual potential, and that
Yes, I know we do.
for instance, Mother Teresa.
But are we all in competition in spirituality?
Certainly not. That there's no end to perfections, and we want to be, their true station is becoming the perfected
And then why
self.
are we becoming separatism?
Okay, that what's happens is that Jesus gave the revelation of God to us in the potency of the Son of God. See? And he said
I
that,
understand that,
okay.
and I believe that wholeheartedly before
Okay.
I even came into this
of course.
classroom.
And what he did is he said that when he who is the Spirit of truth comes, he'll reveal all things. And there's no distinction between persons. But if a businessman is a dentist and you have a toothache and you want to meet that particular dentist and you're in China and you're told that that dentist is named John Smith at 100 Main Street, Missoula, Montana, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, you're going to have a criteria that separates him.
Negative. I already put you to shame right there.
Why?
Because before I went to the Orient, I was a person that needed dental work in Florida, and I made sure that I needed dental work in Florida before I went to...
Okay, but if let's say it was a
Let's
special...
not use hypotheticals.
Okay,
Please.
that if you
Come
want...
on. Let's use real gosh darn religion,
Okay.
and let's use real gosh darn faith.
Okay, that if there's two people in town that both are dentists, see, that they both don't have the same name, they both don't work at the same place at the same time, and so there's
That can happen.
That's
No doubt about it.
Okay, so there is a distinction, and
There is a distinction. But what are we trying to cut through
what
here?
we're trying to cut through is that out of 6 million Jews, one of them was Jesus Christ.
So now we're condemning the Jews.
I am Jewish. I'm not condemning anybody, that especially myself. I was raised Jewish. But that
That big but.
it's not a big but for condemning people. The concept here is that God promised there would be, out of all the descendants of David from the tribe of
nice.
Judah, which all Jews are from the tribe of Judah, one of these descendants of David,
Hold on.
of Judah, would be Jesus Christ.
We're human beings, right?
That's right.
Should we condemn all the blacks in Atlanta and New Orleans?
That's why Baha'u'llah brings elimination of prejudice of all kinds.
But no. But Baha'u'llah, is he condemning the Jews?
No, he was Jewish.
Shall we condemn anybody on this planet?
That by our stubbornness or taking in substances that destroy our intellect,
Education can give us enough to make us drunk with education.
we condemn ourselves.
Just came back, sir, from a place on the island of New Guinea, which is the second island largest in the world. And I was over there with Iranjayas,
Okay?
Indonesians, and these little men and little women have bones through their nose. You might look at them as aborigines that are about 4 feet tall with bones through their nose, and they're willing to kill you and eat your brains. And I made good contact with them. They've been living like that for 6,000 years.
And so the point is, do they have nuclear weapons?
Negative.
Okay, that if people are going to get to the point where they have this type of technology, God also sends them guidance. And Jesus...
And I think I was one of their God-blessed guidance.
So this is exactly what I'm saying, and this is why Baha'u'llah is also a descendant of David. Unlike Jesus, Baha'u'llah is descended from Solomon and is seated upon the throne of David. And this fulfills, it doesn't do away with Christianity,
And
it
I've
fulfills
told
the
them
promises.
about Jesus Christ.
What?
And they believe me.
What?
I've told them about Jesus Christ.
Okay,
And they believe me.
well now you can tell them about the second coming of Christ.
We talked about that too.
Okay, now
We
you know,
talked about...
you know his name?
Hold on one.
Huh?
I talked about the second coming of Jesus Christ. And I talked about Christmas and whatnot.
Do you know his name?
And I talked about, and they said, we've seen Jesus. And Jesus comes all the time.
Now,
Over in the other valley, or this and that.
okay, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Okay, because maybe you'll be able to straighten me out on this or answer the question.
Okay, I hope so.
Okay, now this is Matthew chapter 24.
Okay.
All right, if I can find it. All right, now here's what he says. He says, and Jesus answered them and said unto them, take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am the Christ.
Jimmy Baker.
Wait, and they shall
Jones.
deceive many. Now here's my question. He says, many shall come in my name, saying, I am the Christ.
Many will.
And deceive many. What is Jesus' name? Because he says, many will come in my name. What is Jesus' name?
Very ambiguous, isn't it?
No, I want to know what the answer to that is. Do you know?
If I gave you the answer, then I would be the Archangel Michael or something like that.
Okay.
I am not
Okay.
angel.
Listen. Well, let me put
Maybe
this.
I am.
Okay, listen carefully. Jesus' name is Jesus. That he's saying that when the Christ returns, he's not going to be named Jesus.
I talked to one of your other personnel prior to this,
What do you think of that?
and they said, hey, they said something quite the contrary.
What do you think of that? That when Christ returns, his name won't be Jesus.
We don't need to argue.
I'm not. What do you think of it?
What do I think of it?
Yeah, that when Christ
I
returns,
think
we'll have a
that
different
would
name.
be enormous and beyond all God's comprehension and belief.
Okay, well,
But I don't believe we need to argue about it.
we're not arguing, we're agreeing. So when Christ returns, he has a different name other than Jesus. You know what name that is?
What?
In Mark 8:38, he says that he'll come in the name of Baha'u'llah. Now I'm going to put you on hold, and you can talk to our producer, and you can find out more about that. He says, whosoever is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him will the Son of Man be ashamed when he comes in the glory of the Father. And glory of the Father was translated into English, or from the original language of Jesus, it said Baha'u'llah. So, and Baha'u'llah is also a descendant of King David. But unlike Jesus, he's seated on the throne of David. And this entitles him to the title, the Second Coming of Christ. And so we know that you have some more things, but we did leave you on for about a half hour, in which we wanted to be able to take our next call, which is lit up. And also, we delayed playing the video that we want to show on the earth-shifting crust. Now, it's very essential that when we see that people behave spiritually and that they feed the poor and do these other things, that we also use our intellect to investigate the truth. And we don't want to have anything damaging to this intellect, because if we're in a certain state, we'll be unable to function properly. And this happens to everybody, so I'm not pointing the finger. About 8 hours a day, or more or less for some people, our body and our mind gets into such a state that we're asleep. And things shut down from the exterior world. We go to another world. And different things happen to people in those states. And this purpose of this is to refresh us. But we would like to get just the right amount so that our intellect is the keenest and sharpest when we're back here in this world of being. And that there's a lot of different shocking things to happen to the people to wake them up to these facts. And that after we would have 1 hour of thermonuclear war, in which every American city of 100,000 or more would be destroyed, because the people refuse to use their intellect to recognize the truth, we're going to have a catastrophe upon us. And this is like Maud. Did you ever hear the story of Maud? Well, Maud was a mule, and Maud was stubborn. And every time the farmer wanted her to go forward, she'd push backwards. And when he pulled her, she'd pull away. So finally, he was losing more money on feed than he was being able to get out of her working. So he didn't know what to do. So he saw in the paper, he didn't want to turn her into glue, but at least that way he'd get some of his money back. But he saw in the paper they had a mule training school. So somehow he got her into the back of the pickup truck, and he drove on down to there. Well, they met the dean of the college, and he showed him the literature they had and all this, and he felt that the school was good for his mule, so he matriculated Maud into the school. And the dean says, "So you want to see the first class?" He says, "Sure." And so the dean goes back there, and he gets a baseball bat, a big baseball bat, and he walks over to Maud, and he picks up the bat, and he goes, wham! And Maud, right in the head. And the mule goes, "Rrr!" and falls on the ground. "Rrr!" And the farmer's like, "Hey, what are you doing to my mule? What are you doing to my mule?" And the dean says, "First you have to get their attention." And so the people of the generality are not paying attention. They are inebriated on the material things of this world and materialism and the substances that go along with that. They're inebriated on materialism. And this deprives them of the spiritual, because their intellect, which is designed to know the spiritual, is now so inebriated with the material things, money, power, greed, aggrandizement, politics, corrupt religions and churches and these things, that they are unable to use their intellect to grasp the spiritual. The people that have made great innovations, whether in science or government or the arts, they have had to sacrifice the material, just the same as the prophets of God had to bring forth these spiritual and intellectual fruits and wonders. So therefore, we're going to have a calamity. And after the 1 hour of nuclear war in which a third of mankind is killed, a meteor will hit the earth. It's prophesied. The earthquake will happen that will be so great from this, all the cities of the nations will fall, and the fourth and final wind of destruction, all following each other like 4 waves of the sea, will be this earth-shifting crust. And then, and only then, when the material is removed, that we have detachment, that we can get into the spiritual things. See? And Joe has some more stuff to say on this.
Yeah, that was very clear. The nature of this change, our reality has been based on and from the material. We have been natural man. And in order to make the transition from natural man to spiritual man, the attachment that people have on their ideas that are based on the apparent, the material, there's like no other choice. It's not like it wouldn't happen. It's not like it wasn't destined to happen. It's not like it wasn't designed. It's not like these wobbles weren't within the design. Now this earth-shifting crust that occurs in a frequency throughout history. I mean, I was in a Archaeology 100 class years ago, and one of the first things within the first couple weeks, she was just giving an overview, and she described that she looked at her watch and she said, about this earth-shifting crust, we're due for another one in a few years. You know, and I mean, just this huge light went off in my head. I mean, it's a truing. It's a shaking, it's a truing, it's a realignment to a new axis. The poles will change. The magnetic north and south pole will be in a different place. That will then allow for the thing to move along its way, in its way. Now, underlying this, people have such an attachment to these ideas that it's all synchronized to be basically destroyed in their view, ripped from their hands, ripped from their minds. They'll be left in naked spiritual existence. And only then will they be ready to actually receive the truth and to then begin a spiritual life. But not until then.
Okay, let's take some more calls. We got a caller on our next line. Hello, you're on the air.
I just have a quick question for you.
Sure.
I'm wondering about this. I've been watching on TV now for the last couple of 15 minutes, and I'm wondering if the Earth is destined for this hellfire and damnation that's going to occur with our nuclear wars and
Okay.
what can possibly be done about it.
Okay, exactly. That the message of the earth-shifting crust, for example, or the nuclear war, Graham Allison from Harvard talks about nuclear terrorism, and Einstein and Hapgood pointed to this mechanism of the earth-shifting crust. That what we want to do is present a remedy to these things. And the earth-shifting crust is not going to kill people if they're in safe areas. But the nuclear war is something we can prevent. And that when Baha'u'llah came in 1863, he wrote to the kings and leaders of the world, and he told them they should assemble together as a world government so that there would no longer have to be warfare between the nations. And he wrote them and told them that as he fulfilled prophecy, being that descendant of King David, that if they didn't war between themselves, the citizens of their countries wouldn't be under such heavy burdens of taxes, where 1/3 would have to go to defense because we are worried about what another nation would do. For instance, Montana State doesn't have a high budget to protect us from Colorado or from Wyoming or the Dakotas that's borders with us. So this would take a lot of burden off of the people, and we'd have a lot more beneficial things for everybody. Well, he told them about God's plan for this, and they rejected his most great peace. So then he offered them the lesser peace, and he gave them an adumbrated form for how to set up a world parliament. And the Tsar imitated it in the world court. And Woodrow Wilson's daughter was a Baha'i, and he knew of these things, and he imitated it in the League of Nations. And the Roosevelts imitated it with the UN. Well, when the Tsar did this, they said, you must be a genius. Now we don't have to have wars. We can be civilized and settle our differences at the council table. Where did you hear this? And you must have thought it up. You must be great. And instead of proclaiming Baha'u'llah, he says, why, thank you. And we entered into World War I. The failure of the League of Nations is brought us to the Second World War. And the UN failing is putting us in a venue of a Third World War, which, so I wouldn't use the word hell and damnation, but in a way that's probably accurate, but more of a nuclear threat, like what happened to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So we've seen how this can be used, and life will continue on the planet. So I don't believe in the end of the world, and I can't find in the Bible where the end of the world's prophesied. But just that it is prophesied, we will have peace on earth with justice, and a solution implemented by the end of this century. That is promised. And I can show you the verses where that is. But back to the point, Baha'u'llah told them that had they accepted the most great peace or the lesser peace, none of the catastrophic prophecies in the book of Revelation and in other places would have come to pass. He explained that had they accepted the peace plan, he would have explained to them that the fire in Revelations was thermonuclear even before the development of the bomb. And he would have shown them what would have happened to them, but that the leaders would have avoided it. But as they chose to go down this fork in the road, they're leading us toward catastrophe. So God, in the covenant, gave the world 3 chances. And I'm going to be done in just a second. You can make some more comments. And each one of these was that Baha'u'llah appointed 2 successors as individuals, and then his international house of justice to succeed him that will eventually be elected by all people. So in the Baha'i faith, one-man rule is out the window. There's no imam, there's no pope, there's no high priest. It's all out the window. It's a democracy that's been established by the plan of God so that people could rule over themselves. A government elected for the people, like it says, by the people and of the people, in such a way that we can have a democracy within guidelines to keep ourselves from destroying each other because of the differences that exist, that people make apparent and use as excuses to war with one another. These should be eliminated. So Baha'u'llah's revelation can be summed up into 12 points, like elimination of prejudice and these things. Well, when they rejected his first successor, Abdul-Baha, the war that came was retribution for violating the covenant, and they had World War I. And this violation of Abdul-Baha took place in the Ottoman Empire, and now the Ottoman Empire is gone. The second successor, Shoghi Effendi, the group that violated this was a Baha'i group that broke the covenant in Dresden in Germany. And during World War II, Dresden was hit the hardest practically and completely wiped out. And now it's the Baha'i group mainly in America that supports the United Nations, that is the Security Council. They have an office there in the International Baha'i Office of these covenant breakers in New York that's sponsoring this violation. And we've written to the people to warn them that are in leadership positions, but they won't listen. And it looks like, therefore, after the assassination of Saddam, which they don't have to kill him, his people would retaliate against New York, and the UN building in New York will be destroyed. After this, they could stop and put on the brakes and go, whoa, we've screwed up. Those Baha'is warned us 3 times, and now with the trade tower bombing and several other things, we didn't listen to that, and now the city's nuked. Whoa, let's put on the brakes and implement Baha'u'llah's peace plan now. But if they don't do that, we'll have 1/3 of mankind killed in 1 hour. But the mountainous areas, Jesus said, when you see the Jerusalem surrounded by army, head for the mountains. So after the plagues went through Europe, we had a golden age of prosperity in Europe afterwards. So either way, with the catastrophe or without it, but I can't imagine how we're going to have this without the catastrophe. We are guaranteed a golden age of mankind by the year 2000, even after the displacement of the Earth's surface crust. And the 2 billion people will survive this.
And these 2 billion people are a select group of Baha'u'llah followers?
Certainly not. Certainly not. That in the book of Revelation, in chapter 7, it says, I saw 144,000 promised ones. And then it says, and then it, what?
Where do they come from? Which group of people are these people?
Okay, it says they were gathered from the 12 tribes of Israel. These are the 12 tribes gathered under Israel, under its new name Bahai. And then he says, and then I saw a great multitude, which nobody could number, from every nation, from every tribe, from every peoples of the world. Okay? And these people number about 2 billion. So the Baha'is' faith is in the 6-7 millions, and it's corrupt. And there's only going to be about 144,000 survivors that remain under the provisions of the covenant. The world's religions that has also been hijacked by clergy class, they total about the majority of people in the world, maybe 5 billion to 6 billion, they think, by the year 2000. 2/3 of them will be cut off, and 2 billion from all religions, from all races, from all creeds, all colors, and all nations, they will survive too. And these people will elect the government in which they'll govern themselves. That the Baha'is have not come to take over the world or to exclude, but that to give people the message of today to show how Buddha is in the plan, and Moses, and Zoroaster, and Krishna, and Jesus, and Muhammad, the Bab, and Baha'u'llah, as well as Adam in the beginning. And all of these are in a blueprint that God had for educating humanity from the immature into the age of maturity today. All the other revelations, like Adam through Muhammad, was like elementary school. The Bab's teachings was like high school. And Baha'u'llah brings a university education. Well, for somebody on the University of Montana to say everybody that will attend this school will graduate college, for the people at Hellgate to say, are we excluded? And the people at Sentinel to say, are we excluded? And the people at Big Sky to say, are we excluded, is ridiculous. They all go to high school, but they're separated. But when they go to college, they meet on the same campus, and they're united. But their freedoms aren't taken away. It's unity through diversity.
Those are good words.
Okay, now, Baha'u'llah says, if a man's words exceed his deeds, his death is better than his life. So the thing that we have to do is that what we're saying is there is an objective criteria that is beyond personalities, that anybody can apply, that Jesus gave. If we want to know what time it is, we look at the clock. If we want to know what the temperature is, like Joe was talking about criteria earlier, and how truth must be proven, like the scientists, we look at the thermometer for temperature, the speed of the car speedometer. If you want to know how fast the car's going, you don't look at your thermometer. So almost everything has a criteria. And this is why we've had a scientific revolution, an industrial revolution, a revolution in government, a revolution in economics and business, social freedoms, the arts and sciences. Yet we've had no revolution in spirituality or religion. Yet Jesus Christ gave a new criteria of how to recognize somebody if they claim that they are a promised one from God. And the criteria he gave, which is in the New Testament, which we give to people for free, like we do the show for free. There's no paid clergy in the Baha'i faith. There's no clergy at all in the Baha'i faith. And if you come to the Sunday service at 2 o'clock at South 3rd Avenue West, this Sunday there'll be a speaker there. It's like Joe is speaking today or myself. We're just Baha'is that are volunteering. Nobody's clergy. And everybody comes up here. As soon as you hear the word Baha'u'llah, you can go out and teach. There's no ordination. There's no canonization. There's no baptism. There's no circumcision. So we're not going to get any money from you or anything from you. We can keep your foreskin too if you still got it.
What about that new criteria? Tell me more about that.
Okay, yeah, thanks for roping me in. So, yeah, I need a corral, don't I? So the new criteria that Jesus gave is the fulfillment of prophecy. Moses gave 10 plagues. Well, he brought the law. That was harsh. Jesus brought love. And through the intellect, he gave us a way to recognize him. He showed that thousands of years before he was born, he was prophesied by name, by prophesied date, by the prophesied address and mission, what his name would be and where it was in the scripture 1,000 years before he was born, where he was prophesied to be, when he was prophesied to be there, and what he would do when he got there, like a business card. And business has advanced rapidly with the business card. It gives your name, where you're located, what your business is, and when you're there, so the people will come to you and they won't go to somebody else. So Jesus showed that in the book of Isaiah, it says, "Behold, Emmanuel will come. Hear now, O house of David, Emmanuel will come." Well, Jesus was of the house and lineage of King David, entitling him to be the Christ. If he wasn't of David, he wouldn't even be a candidate to be the Christ or the Messiah. Because the word Christ or Messiah means an anointed male sperm descendant of David. But is he named Emmanuel? In the Gospel of Matthew, it says, so they woke from sleep and Joseph named him Jesus. Jesus is Greek. Emmanuel's Hebrew. In English, it means God is with us. It's the same name in a different language. He was prophesied by name. Then it says he'd be born in Bethlehem in Micah, 600 years before he was born. And he was. It says, "Here now, he who will be ruler of Israel will be in Bethlehem." Well, the rulers of Israel were the descendants of King David. And the reason, now maybe Joseph named him Emmanuel, Jesus, on purpose and purposely went to Bethlehem to have Jesus born there so he could say, "See my son? He fulfills prophecy," right? Caesar, Augustus, demanded that all of the people go to their cities to register the census to pay taxes. And if they didn't do this, they was at the penalty of death. Therefore, Joseph, with his wife 9 months pregnant, made a journey on a donkey, across quite a many miles from Nazareth to Bethlehem in the winter time. Well, although that's kind of subtropics, it doesn't really matter. But this is something he was forced to do against his will. And that's how there were so many descendants of King David in Bethlehem that they couldn't find a room. They had to go to the manger. And that's where Jesus was born. Now, have you ever heard of Zoroaster?
Yeah, I have.
Zoroaster was alive 1,000 years before Jesus. And Zoroaster said in a prophecy that's well documented, you can read it in the Encyclopedia Britannica or any of the books of Zoroaster with his prophecies. And it says, he said, 1,000 years after me, go to a manger, follow a star in the sky, go to a manger, and there you will find me. And the word magi is the Zoroastrian word for priest. So what would Christmas be like without the three magi? So these Zoroastrian priests following the prophecy of Zoroaster show up in Jerusalem at that exact time. So Jesus fulfilled prophecy from Zoroaster also. And then they found out in the Holy Book, in Micah, it said Bethlehem, so they went there. Now, after they left town, Herod had all the babies slaughtered in Bethlehem. And they've actually just, in the last 2 years, found the bodies of these babies of the slaughter of the infants, showing that it was in Bethlehem and it's historical. But Jesus was warned, his family was warned by the Zoroastrian priests, the Magi, and they went to Egypt where he grew up. And the Gospel of Thomas, that's not in the Bible, because it says some things in it offensive to the organized churches, so they wouldn't let it in there. Neither's the Gospel of Peter in there. They burned and destroyed that, but there was a copy found in an urn in 1881. That's another story. That some of these gives what he did while he was in Egypt. And later they came back and moved to Nazareth. So his place was prophesied, Bethlehem. Well, there might be a lot of people named Jesus. I don't know. There's a lot of people named Jesus Delacroix in South America, you know, which is Jesus in that language. And maybe some of them were in Bethlehem or born in Bethlehem. I don't know. But the date fixes it. And in Daniel 9 it says there'll be 470 weeks of years. Well, how many days are there in a week? I know you know the answer. I'm not trying to patronize you. But maybe you can say it out loud anyway. How many? 7. So 70 weeks is how many days?
490.
490. And each day is a year. So that's 490 years. Briefly, there were 490 years from 457 BC on March 21st to March 21st, 34 AD, when Jesus was crucified on the button. And his mission, he said, was to die for sins. And although 2 other people were crucified next to them, they weren't named Jesus. They were thieves on the cross. They weren't descended from David, and they were being crucified for stealing, and they weren't dying for sins. So he fulfills the prophesied name, the prophesied date, the prophesied address, and the prophesied mission. And this is the new criteria that Jesus gave. Now, this criteria that I've just told you is 2,000 years old. That is in the Bible. This is why Jews, Greeks, Romans, when they read this from the Jewish book that was in the Greek libraries and the Roman libraries that they had access to, and although the majority rejected him, they couldn't believe it because it even said he would be rejected and crucified. And so they could believe it because it was objective. He fulfilled that. And that is why they would rather be fed alive to lions than just simply say, okay, I don't believe, and then turn their back and later on say to their friends, you know, I was just telling that so they'd go away. They didn't want to betray their faith in public either. They had a faith. Christianity is a faith, but true Christianity was a faith based on proof. And these are the proofs that the apostles taught, and Matthew taught them, Paul taught them, and that's why they're in the Gospel of Matthew. The first 3 chapters is a book of proofs that shows the fulfillment of this prophecy. Later, after the Council of Nicaea, and later when Charlemagne came along, all the pagans you heard him killing, up to 1,000 in a day in Europe, if you know the history, he had a sword in one hand and the crucifix with a statue of an image, and nobody had a picture of Jesus that he said was Jesus. And this was the image, our physical bodies in the image of the animal. 2 eyes, 2 ears, nose, mouth, arms, and legs. Well, my animal at home, our little doggy, is a beast. And there's a beast spoken of in Revelation. But my little doggy that's a beast is cute and cuddly and fun. But he can't think in the abstract. He's limited to the 5 senses. And our physical body is in the image of the animal or the beast. So this image of the beast was the image of Jesus' physical body, which is in the image of the beast on a cross. And if the people wouldn't bow down and kiss that God incarnate image, they had their heads chopped off by Charlemagne. And he was killing true Christians. 1,000 men, women, and children in a single village in a single day. So the people that didn't want to die, they emulated their faith, and they says, okay, I believe in the beast, this cross, with the sign of the animal body on it. Well, then we went into the Dark Ages, where there was no written history for 200 years. So when we come out of that, now we just believe in what we believe, the majority does, I mean, because their father did, their father before them did, their father before them believed in the God incarnate concept, where Jesus said he was a reflection of God, where he was the Son of God according to the Spirit, but made of the seed or sperm of David according to the flesh. They reversed this, where he's God's son physically, and he's supposed to be adopted by Joseph, so he's David's son spiritually. In fact, he's spiritually God's son and physically David's son, giving him the word Christ, meaning an anointed male sperm descendant of David. Christ refers to his lineage. Well, everybody forgot that because the Trinity was foisted on them by violence. And Isaac Newton went back and found the truth of it, and he denounced the Trinity. And he gave them the book of Mathematics and Principia and declared the Industrial Revolution and the spiritual one, that we should go back to true Christianity. And this is documented in his writings. As a matter of fact, I have an article available at the Bahai Center that gets into Isaac Newton's belief on Christianity and what the true Christianity was. And if people turn to that and they live the true Christian life and they teach the true Christian faith of the kingdom of God, meaning the kingship is that of the male sperm descendant of David, the Christ. And Baha'u'llah is also a male sperm descendant of David. And they're firm in the covenant of Jesus. Then in the book of Hebrews, he said he would come again as a high priest after the order of Melchizedek. If they have those three things, they can accept and enter the kingdom on earth here as it is in heaven. And if they don't have those three things, they're deprived of their, according to the text of the gospel, of their rays of the Holy Spirit, and they don't enter the kingdom on earth. And if God had mercy on them, and I'm not their judge, they judge themselves, they will enter the kingdom in heaven, but they won't enter it on earth. So Baha'u'llah fulfills the same criteria. The reason we show Jesus fulfilling it is not to prove Jesus, but to prove the criteria. And then if the criteria is proven, we can apply it on Baha'u'llah. And if he fails, we don't want to have a darn thing to do with him. And if he passes it, that's another story. And this is why we give free firesides at the Bahai Center, which you can walk out on at any moment's notice if you've had enough, or you can stay and sit and give your own feedback. And there's about 45 minutes worth of information. One of them is the proofs for Jesus. I think it only took me 15 minutes to go through it. But usually it's taught anywhere from an hour to 3 hours because the people that attend it want to talk about other things. And they want to give feedback. It's not a lecture. This show is not supposed to be a lecture either. We have some feedback, but the firesides are very loose and open. The entire amount of this program, one person can spend 2 or 3 hours in a fireside talking about these things. And if you ever find something that's not true, you've heard it from me first, don't accept it. But if it's proven to be true, and it was different from what we believed, like we thought the earth was flat because it looked flat, but Galileo invents a telescope and proves it's round, then we should go by a criteria that's powerful enough to get us to believe in things that we didn't believe in first. That's called being converted. We used to believe in the flat earth, and now we saw Galileo's telescope and his proof, and now we're believers. We've been converted to being understanding the earth's the globe. But we did it and became believers based on proof. And that's what we're saying. And this is the spiritual revolution. Now, I don't care whether you become a Baha'i or not. I want people to use their intellect to be free from the junk that's out there or the junk that might be in our minds.
But what makes you think people aren't already using their intellect to the best of their abilities?
Okay, they have to be, because otherwise we wouldn't have science and technology and the advancement of the arts. But it's not used when it comes to looking at prophecy as a standard and criteria for recognizing God alive in the world today, the infinite essence, sending a living promised one into our world. I'm saying the spiritual revolution is taking that intellect that thinking people are definitely using in every other aspect of human life and applying it to the spiritual and to the field of religion in a pure of heart and objective way. And if they did that, they would see this new criteria Jesus gave. They could test for themselves whether it works, and they could judge for themselves whether Baha'u'llah fulfills it or not. See? And in that judgment is how they judge themselves. That's why it's called Judgment Day, because people use their intellect to judge for themselves, not listening to clergy or anybody else. A teacher doesn't berate them. She says 2 and 2 is 4. You judge. She puts out 2 apples and 2 more apples. She says, you count them. If she's a good teacher, my teacher was good when I had that experience in kindergarten and first grade. If she waves the math book around and screams at you, you're going to go to hell if you think it's 5 or 3. That's not helping anybody. So we have to be able to have mental calm in these activities when we investigate the truth of religion. But there's buzzwords out there like cult, like witch, like communist, that just diffract the people from being and derail them from totally being able to independently investigate it. But it's of prime importance, in my opinion, that this spiritual revolution take place, that the people use their intellect to look into the Bible and to prophecy as a viable, accurate, and valid criteria for determining if somebody alive amongst us today, walking, living, and breathing, fulfills prophecy.
Well, it makes a lot of sense to me, but, I think people will use that, will exercise their intellect at their own level of spiritual understanding or realization, and you can't, tell people you've got to become intellectually active and
That's right. You can't,
expect them to,
absolutely. You're right.
do it.
You can lead a horse to water, you can't make him drink. But people that are already thinking, if they attend these free Bahai fireside classes, there's no obligation. They're free. You will be exposed to this information on a very detailed way. You'll see the actual verses. You go back and look at Bible translations. You can do a whole bunch of stuff to see how accurate you think it is, or inaccurate. And we also go through the Great Pyramid of Giza, which the outside has scientific information, which has astounded people. Like the Pi, the greatest archaeologist, William Flinders Petrie of Egypt, declared that the number pi was definitely used in the architecture building of that Great Pyramid. So this is advanced knowledge pi, but the pyramid's 5,500 years old. And the inside of it, it's claimed that the inner passageway system is a chronological time scale, where each inch of the pyramid unit represents a solar year, giving the dates which Christians have found for Jesus and Noah and Moses and Abraham and so forth. But they can't explain the rest of the building. One of the dates they get in the pyramid is March 21st, 1844, which is the beginning of the Bahai era. And in Mark 8:38, Jesus says, "Whosoever is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him will the Son of Man be ashamed when he comes in the glory of the Father." And that was translated out of the original Aramaic, where it said Baha'u'llah. Baha's glory, who is of, and God and Father's Allah, Baha'u'llah. So people don't know this, because it's not printed in the newspapers that the oil companies and the Christian churches pay for. The Lee Enterprises has the media sewn up here in town. Even the college paper, the Kaiman, isn't a real student paper. From when I've been on student papers, it's owned by foreign interest groups, that is, groups off campus that pay high money advertising dollars, and it has to toe a party line. Are simple enough for an 8-year-old to go through them and understand them. And I've seen 8-year-olds go through them and comprehend them better than adults.
I know. So, do you have any more comments? If not, I'm going to put you on hold, and you can talk to our producer. We've got a free literature for you called The 12 Foundation Stones, and you can talk to him about some other stuff if you want, like where these firesides take place. Sometimes they're at the public library, too.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. It's been very entertaining.
Oh, let's hope it was at least entertaining, you know. All right. Thanks for calling. We got another call on the line we're going to take.
All right.
Okay. Let's have another caller. Oh, we don't have another one? Okay. Now, Joe, did you have a chance to go through some of the things on the chart yet?
No.
Okay, why don't you just take the ball?
All right. Let's see. Yeah, some of the things that are coming up here are, obviously, if it's true, for all intensive purposes, it's used for a reference, you can trust truth. You can trust a truing element, right? If you can prove that it is sourceful, that it is from a source. Now, there's 4 criteria for truth that Abdul-Baha explains. He's the son of Baha'u'llah. And because without any one of these, you are open to some problematic occurrences. He denotes one, if within your mind you can see that something is true. That's one way, but your mind